All right, what's up, y'all? We're gonna go over some of the trades I took this week. Bear with me as I will be going between the charts and then checking my channel in the Discord to see, what was called out, so I can then pull up the chart and break it down. So XLU, I'm gonna go in reverse order. So XLU was the last call out I made in my channel. It was a breakout of this triangle pattern. I did send the chart in the chat. Looking at it on the 1 hour, you can see where we had the consolidation period here. You can see we had the resistance here, previous support, right? And then you see we broke out, closed above, and then we pulled back and came back inside of it. I did cite in my channel that I will be looking to add more if we came back to this trend line, which we didn't. That would have been ideal entry. But while I was going through the charts, this kind of came up. As I was looking for a trade, this is what it came up, and I caught this at 12 o'clock. I caught it in my channel at 12:03. So that was, around this, after this 11:30 candle closed above this breakout level. That's when I got in. All right, again, I wanted an entry here, and if it had moved back to that level during the day, I would have just got in more here. If this pullback came here, I would have got in. But what we ended up doing for the day was pulling back here, pushing back up, making a higher high, which is good for our calls. And then we pulled back double bottom to end the day. So I'm feeling fine with that. The reason I got in on the breakout was because, again, I hadn't seen it, come do this, pull back right here. If I saw this at open, I would have got in here. But I didn't see it, and I didn't want to miss the gap fill. If we went ahead and filled gap today, I didn't want to miss the gap fill waiting on the pullback. So I went ahead and got in, got an extra week on it. I got the 69 calls, right, which was at the money at that time. And the target is, of course, gap fill 69.59. And then if we can, hit gap fill, I'm gonna see if we can actually push above these highs. Because when you zoom out, right, you see that we haven't been making higher highs. We look at the big swings. We see we have a higher high here, or a lower high here compared to the previous high, lower high, right? As of right now. So we see that that can be a potential trend line that could come into play, which will kind of put us on target for a gap fill, right? So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. What I'm expecting to see is us to go ahead, maybe pull back a little more. That would have been what I was thinking, but now we have to see what the gap is on Monday, and if we'll continue higher. And that's what I'll be looking for. Was XLU on my watch list, or was I using a screener? No, XLU was just on my my watch list on TradingView. All right, so here's one of my main watch lists that I'll flip through. And then I have a watch list of a bunch of other stocks that I'll flip through. So as I'm going through the trading day, if I feel like taking a trade, then I'll just flip through my watch list and see if there's anything that stands out on the charts and kind of just rapid fire chart them in my mind. Right. So as I'm flipping through, I'm like, okay, cool. I see that resistance. I see that trend line there. Right. I see this upper resistance here. Cool. Right. 1 second. They should know I'm on the class. All right. So that's what I was looking at on XLU. And that's how I'll find trades throughout the day. Is flipping through like that. Quick chart in my mind, next chart, right? And sometimes I'll do the different time frames as well. So that was XLU. Tesla, we took 52%. So let's go to Tesla. 52% on Tesla. So do I do support and lower support? Lower support. like support levels that are below. Wow, this is wild. And we closed that out here. Anyway, what do you mean by lower support, Wally? Just elaborate in the chat for me. I'm gonna keep rolling. So Tesla trade. It was a breakdown of Tesla trade. Looking at smaller time frames, but also bigger time frames. Pop on a 15-minute. All right, going through my day, flipping through charts. I feel like taking a trade. What can I take? Notice this on Tesla. So I went ahead and just laid it out. Right. Like I said, I just flipped through. So I saw this on Tesla. Said, all right, cool. All right, let me go ahead and establish that trend. I see we have a support right there. Oh, got you. Yeah. So support. And when I say lower support, yeah, I'm just looking at the different levels and resistance, just different levels of resistance moving up. So I established this on Tesla. I saw this was how it was setting up. So I said, cool, right? We already gapped up on the earnings. Earnings can provide a lot of volatility for stocks that day. We already gapped up, so I wanted to wait for a breakout to confirm the direction. Right? I didn't want to just get in calls here and assume. I didn't want to get in puts because we are making lower highs, right? So my inclination would have been more on the bearish side, but we're consolidating and tightening regardless. No, my watch list is not created based off of volume. These are the same stocks that have been on my little watch list for like 2-3 years. Majority of my stocks on my watch list are just based on stocks that have weekly options available. So they are higher volume stocks and by nature, but not that I'm specifically seeking after, a certain volume profile. It's just weekly options. I flip through them. How do I select the top 4 or 5? I don't. I don't have a top 4 or 5. I'd say I flip through when I start initially. I flip through SPY. I'll go check Roku, Boeing, Tesla, Apple, Amazon. I look at Delta Airlines, American. I mean, just kind of whatever comes to mind. Nike, Disney, like whatever pops in my head, I'll pull up a chart. For me and my trading style, as you've seen, it's less about trading a particular stock and more about trading price action and how people move with price. So I don't think I traded the same stock anytime this week, actually, as we'll go through to see that. So it's all just based on candlesticks and price action. So Tesla trade, saw this, right? Charted it out, said, okay, cool. I want to see a break. I want to see a break of this. We keep making these lower highs, or we break the resistance. We break the support. Right. Ideally for a support break, we get the break. And this is how I typically would trade it: is a break, pull back to retest, and then continuation. Right. However, this being the earnings day, I was like, yeah, we probably will move very heavy if we get a move. I'm not going to wait on a pullback for a retest, but if so, I'm just going to hold it. Right. So that was my plan. We see our next level of resistance would be here, and then finally here. So those are my targets. I called out the Tesla trade at 12:34. All right. So that would be pretty much right after this candle. So after this candle, so we could take it down to a 5. So here, right after we had this 5-minute candle close above, I entered on this next candle, right? So I entered there, right? Tesla, you see it rejected that resistance, the same highs over here, the same rejection level here, it rejected again here, right? And then treated it as support. Resistance flip support. Yes, Raymond, exactly. So that's what we're looking at. So that's what we're looking at on Tesla, and I just let the trade ride out. right? That was a first target getting hit. It pulled back again, right? Holding that support. And then it tested resistance again. And then ultimately we closed here. I called the final close at 52% on Tesla. Yep, at 352. Right. And these were 157.50 calls. So again, this was pretty much at the money. I don't know if Tesla had 157 strike, but I got 157.50s. And so that was that Tesla trade, right? Held it. The reason I held the way through is because we came back. You see, we weren't breaking our lows, right? Or not really breaking them. Like even here, we broke the low, but we popped back up, broke it and popped back up. So I was just looking at this area that we were holding the support, and not being, not being too concerned with that level there. So that was a Tesla trade. It ultimately ran on. It would have been amazing to hold, but close it out as a day trade. And I didn't look at Tesla today. All right, let's keep rolling. Microsoft calls yesterday at 11:35. So yesterday is Thursday. Microsoft 11:35. So I signaled those here. And those shot up very quickly. Yeah. So let's look at this. I think this was a higher time frame trade. Yep. So the Microsoft trade, here's what the plan was, right? On Microsoft, that we got in 11:50. Let me make sure I wasn't on the 1 hour with this one. Yeah. Yeah. That was most likely off the 30. So looking at that, Microsoft, we established this opening. Yep, I remember that exactly. So it started on the 1 hour. We had the 1 hour. I established the range for the 1 hour, right? So that was our 1 hour range for the first 1 hour candle. And then on the 30, right, we came down. So we had an inside candle here. We came down, bounced off at support, and then we bounced off it at support again right here, right? So that's triple bottom support. And then once we shot up and broke above this high, I went ahead and got in calls for a move back up. And I wanted to test a higher day, which it ended up doing here. But I called an exit at 12, which is when it came and tested this high, right? So I wanted to shoot for higher day, but I just said, okay, I'm gonna target the high here, right? And I called an exit at 12:04. So that's what I was looking at with Microsoft. Y'all can put any questions in the chat. But that was the Microsoft trade. Got 245 calls that I entered around this candle. So one strike out the money, or 50 cents out the money for Friday's expiration, which was next day. Got in on this candle, got out on this candle. And then it pulled back and ultimately ended up pushing up to the final target. If y'all got questions, put them in the chat. Apple. So yeah, I did take a loss on a call out. I swung Apple puts. Tesla gapped up on earnings and drug Apple up with it, and that's kind of the story behind that. But we can look at it. So I closed those yesterday morning. That was here. This was one that was a little conflicting for me. Full-time frame continuity, what he says. Apple puts was conflicting for me. This was I broke my trading rule. So one of my trading rule, don't short full-time frame continuity. So one of my trading rules is, if I'm in a trade to one direction and that trade on that time frame triggers the opposite bias, right? If I'm in puts, but I get a call trigger, or a call trade setup, then I would exit my current setup and not necessarily have to take the reverse, but to exit that. And I didn't follow that rule here. I got in Apple puts on this day. I got them at open. So I got Apple puts at open around 9:50. Right. Got Apple puts most likely after we opened here. Let me go back. Sorry, tripping. After we opened here, pushed down and took out the lows. Right. So took out the lows, got the puts, and came down. And yeah, I broke my rule. That's why you see me like what in the world? So it came down, broke the low, came down, came and tested this low. That was my target. I was like, all right, cool. I'm up. I feel like we're gonna keep being bearish. And we came and tested this trend line that I have laid out. I want to say I laid this out a while ago when we were on another Zoom. And then after that, it bounced off the trend line and I didn't close it. I just didn't close it. I saw it bounce off. I said, ooh, it bounced off, but I'm swinging it. I think what kept me in it was the fact that it was a expiration for next week. So I knew I still had time. And also I thought Tesla would drop on earnings. So this was me again breaking my rule. I saw it bounce off the trend line. I saw it make a higher move up off the bouncing candle from the trend line. That's where I would normally take calls. I held my puts. It kept going up. Tesla gapped up. The market ran, and that's kind of the story on that. Took it at a 52% loss. SPY, I got SPY calls. On Wednesday as well. And that's where you saw that screenshot in my channel where I have Apple puts minus 50, SPY calls plus 118. Yeah, I was swinging. Yeah, Moody. Yeah, bro. Yeah, we ain't too crazy. So I got SPY calls here. All right. And so SPY calls was funny enough, like the same kind of deal as far as my trend line bounce. I took SPY calls, but I kept the Apple puts. And I also had the SPY calls as a hedge. So I called out SPY calls. I think this was actually a different trade, I think. Nah, it couldn't have been. So I got SPY calls and we we ran. I mean, I kept them. I used them as a hedge for the Tesla puts. I mean, the Apple puts. So knowing that Tesla had earnings the next day, I was thinking that Tesla would drop. So I held my Apple puts because if Tesla dropped and the market dropped, then Apple would drop. But I was like, well, I'm gonna keep these SPY calls because if Tesla shoots up, then SPY is gonna shoot up, and Apple will probably shoot up. So I'm gonna take a loss on these puts. So I use SPY calls as a hedge. Tesla shot up, SPY shot up, market shot up. I closed them at open. All right. But that was a trend line bounce that I should have took on Apple, but didn't. Zoom puts. I feel like I called out a lot of trades. Zoom puts on the 24th at 10:06 a.m. Yep, there it is marked off. Not that though. So at 10:06, I want to say this was off a 4-hour time frame. Looked like it was a 4-hour. 10:06. I'm trying to remember why I called these puts in the first place. Let's see. Let's take it back. Oh, there you go, right here. Okay. So Zoom puts, right? Here's what I was looking at on Zoom. So Zoom, right? You see this top here. All right. So we have our clear resistance. We see we're topped, right? Rejection, rejection, reject, 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 reject. Cool. All right. So we come back in Monday, first candles, opens up, shoots up super high, and then shoots down, breaks through these levels here that we could look at for support or demand bounce, completely breaks and closes through those. And I believe that's pretty much where I went ahead and got in is after we broke those down. I'm gonna go ahead and take it down to a smaller time frame. Yeah. Yeah, I know I wasn't looking at on 05. So that was Zoom. Right, Zoom was just a breakdown. We had seen this move up, right? Like I talked about before, we have our moves. We know we go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Right. And Zoom hadn't made its down yet. So I was anticipating the move down. Ultimately wanting to see it come down to 68.50 or at least 69.25 here. Called the puts out, 70 puts, sorry. So 70 puts would have been at the money for Friday expiration. And I sent out a alert to take profits at 25% at 10:39. So about 30 minutes later, pretty much at the low of this candle, it seems, around here is where we went ahead and took profits at. Zoom, I'm pretty sure it went ahead and gapped down. Yeah, I did hold runners on Zoom. I think I sent an alert out the next day that if you held runners to take profits and the percentage we were up, maybe I sent that to somebody in the text. I don't see it in this channel. But yeah, so that was the Zoom setup, just a break of the support level, right? Previous support, broke it. Went ahead and just rolled that out, and then it did come down to test this level here. And then we gapped down, right? And gapped down to another support level and then bounced back up. Right. CRM, that was a swing from the MSC indicator from like 2-3 weeks ago. And then GM. GM. I sent the chart. Told y'all to watch it for a move up. GM break over 36. Yeah. So this was the GM trade on cap on the 23rd. Okay, so it was over here. All right, so this was the GM trade. Same sort of deal though. So I was looking at GM, right? Top tier, top tier, top tier. I called it at 10 a.m. I sent the chart at 10 a.m. GM calls look good over 36.02. Target for the gap fill 36.44. And then I called the actual trade at 10:28. So that was called out as this candle was closing. Sorry, as this candle was closing. So after we broke through, came back down and then pushed back up, that's where I ended up calling out the entry on the GM. So we broke out, pulled back in and pushed back up. We entered here and then carried out for the gap fill, right? With your gap fill level being here. And so that's where I called an exit. I called the entry at 1028, 36.5 calls, which was in line with the gap fill area. This is why I chose that strike. So I called 36.5 calls, and we got out at 40%, around 1 o'clock. Yeah, which is right here. Yep. So at 1 o'clock, it went ahead, filled gap. That was the exit, 40% on that trade. And that's it for call outs. I did call SPY. I didn't put this in my channel, but I'll still share it because I've talked about it plenty of times before. I did take SPY calls at open today. 403 calls, 0 DZE at 1.93 premium at 936. So talked about it before, just gap statistics and how SPY tends to move on a gap. And oh, no, why is the gap not showing? All right, so we closed here, opened here. All right. So I took them at 403 calls, 0 DTE, which was at the money. This is Thursday, sorry, Friday. Tripping. At 936. The reason being is SPY fills its gaps most of the time on Fridays. I don't know what am I looking at? I don't know why I thought there was this huge gap down on SPY that I was trading. I traded it for a gap fill. It ain't even have a gap. I might have been sleepy. Well, anyway, I got SPY calls for a gap fill. I don't see a gap on the chart. So I don't know what I had going on in my mind. I mean, the gap was to like 404, that's the actual gap. That is crazy. That is crazy. So the gap was from 403.66 to 404.75. So a $1 gap. But I ended up getting calls and holding them. I guess I thought there was a bigger gap. So never mind. There's not much lesson in there besides sometimes when you don't get a lot of sleep before the day, maybe you make a good trade. But I did get 403 calls at open and they went over 100%, obviously. So that is it. Those are the trades I took. I took some lottos. Those all missed on earnings. I just ended up taking 50% losses on the lottos, but I didn't do like a crazy lotto size because it was just earning speculation. I was thinking that my thinking behind it was that after pushing up to the 400 level at the beginning of the week, that we would reject that level back down. And that kind of carrying over into the earnings, thinking that we would push down and the earnings will push down. And we saw on Wednesday it pushed down. I think the earnings trades I took were on Tuesday or on Monday for Tuesday earnings. But Wednesday was the day that we pushed down and pulled back. That's what I was kind of looking for on Tuesday. So took those L's on earnings. But other than that, everything else that was a planned out trade pretty much hit, except for the Apple puts that I held for the swing for Tesla earnings. That I had with a SPY call that did over 100%. So y'all have any questions about any of the charts, any of the trades, y'all can unmute or put it in the chat. I bet. Bet, bet, bet. Nothing. Going once, going twice.